Greetings and konnichiwa. Welcome back to the Onyx Tavern Vlog series on Russia Sentai ToQger. I'm your host, Rick the Barkeep, and today we're going to be talking about Station 25, Right Out of a Fairy Tale. Now, this story is actually kind of a mixed bag for me. On the one hand, the plot is very unusual and not in a bad way, but there are a lot of logic gaps and things I don't particularly understand, which is always we'll go ahead and talk about. But the story that we have going on is pretty good. Again, we're focusing on the character of Tokatchi, and as I've said before, he's not really one of my favorite characters, but any opportunity to make him my favorite character is always good, to give him more character development. However, I will say it seems that we've been getting a lot of Tokatchi stories kind of at the expense of Kagura and Hikari. But, we gotta take what we can get, and hopefully those guys will get more episodes down the line. The shtick that Tokatchi has for the season is that he's not very confident in his abilities and usually takes some sort of external force to get him to believe in himself. But in this episode, what's fascinating about it is that he has an internal source. It's basically himself that's making him believe in himself. So let's talk about the story overall. So the plot of this is that Zett, for whatever reason, has been able to control light almost in the same way that he controls darkness, but not as much, and he kind of wants to test it out. So he gets the pinpoint shadow to create beings from the imaginations of humans, because imagination in the series is equal to that of light, obviously opposite of darkness. So if he creates things from imagination, and as I say here, these characters are the embodiment of imagination, then he could be able to control light, because he still has that fascination here. What his end game is on controlling light, I'm not exactly sure, but this is kind of like the first steps towards that once we get out of the whole marriage arc, basically. So the pinpoint shadow is creating different fictional characters from Red Riding Hood and Cinderella, to what was the other guy's name? Momotaro, and the Emperor with no clothes, basically. But he also creates a superhero called Reunite from Tokatchi's memory. Now, I will talk about the plot of this a little bit later, but let's talk about the good things with Tokatchi. Because the Reunite was a character he created from his imagination based on his older brother. An older brother that he has just now remembered about. Kind of the idea is that he looked up to his brother, that his brother was the smarter one, the more athletic one, the better one. And he just kind of idolized him as opposed to resenting him. So he turned his brother into a superhero. The Reunite character. And what Reunite does actually in this episode is that Reunite helps Tokatchi gain confidence. At the beginning of the episode, they were all training together, the three guys were, and it seems like Tokatchi was having a hard time. Obviously, again, because it's been happening throughout the series, his lack of confidence in himself. But the Reunite says you have great potential to do these things, you just got to believe in yourself. That's kind of what he was saying, a very condensed way of saying that. And Tokatchi does believe in himself again, and is able to defeat the monster again. And what we kind of learn from this, and Mio kind of hits the nail on the head at the end of the episode, is the fact that he always had the confidence to do this, because what Reunite is a manifestation of his imagination. So, in a sense, it is himself telling himself to be more confident because he knows he can be more confident. And I really like that. That's kind of a nice turn on. Instead of having another external force come in, or one of the ToQger say, I believe in you, you can do this, or some little kid, we got Tokatchi without having the split screen talking to yourself. It's done in a unique way. It's taking something that's very personal and very important to him and manifesting it to help him out. And the fact that it's his brother, which is yet another recovered memory, really helps him, because once he kind of realizes, yes, that superhero that I made my brother into, it's got a much more personal feel into it. Because honestly, when I first saw this, I was like, why did they create some superhero? Why didn't they use like a previous Sentai hero that's part of his imagination, or maybe another Japanese hero or something? But no, it made sense because that's how he imagines his brother. So that complaint kind of went out the window once I understood exactly what he was using it for. So pretty good, not too bad. But let's actually talk about kind of the plot and what's happening with Zett trying to control the light, basically. So the pinpoint shadow has the ability to basically blast objects or people and make imaginary characters spring out. Now, what happened is that after Pinpoint Shell had a couple of failures, Zett fires him and orders him to destroy the imaginary characters. Now, I'm not sure why he wants to destroy the imaginary characters. He obviously looks at them as failures and just wants to kind of get rid of them. And also, since they're associated with light, it's counterintuitive to what you want to do with darkness, even though Zett wants to control, the light as well and the darkness. So I'm a little confused why they just need to be eliminated, not just, go out and do whatever and stuff. But what's even more curious is that the ToQger save them. They go hide them in different places. They trade clothes with them so that nobody can suspect. So that they're not destroyed by the crows. But at the end of the episode, when they destroy Pinpoint Shadow, they all disappear into nothingness anyway. So what was the point exactly of trying to save them if they were going to die anyway, in a sense, or at least cease to exist? I didn't particularly understand that. Yes, I know I can listen to the Optimus Prime quote in my head, freedom is the right of all sentient beings, but are they really alive? Are they just, again, they are figments of the imagination if you think about it. It's noble for them to do that, but again, I'm just, in the whole scheme of things, they saved them just for them to be destroyed later. I didn't particularly get that. I'm also confused with the choices that we have on the characters that were brought to life. Again, we've already described Rio Knight, so we get that. We have a Japanese folk character, Momotaro, which I know nothing about other than that he's associated with peaches on a quick wiki search. The episode doesn't bother to explain who this character is, but since it's Japanese and it's primarily intended for a Japanese audience, they would know who this is. Although curiously, they also have Red Riding Hood, Cinderella, and the Emperor that had no clothes. Now, I'm just a little bit curious about the casting of these characters. Now, again, I know this is in Japan, it's for a Japanese audience, but consider for the fact that all three of these characters come from Grimm's fairy tales. Although I'm not quite sure on the Emperor with No Clothes, but I know Cinderella and Red Riding Hood are from Grimm's fairy tales, which, by the way, are German. Now, anytime you see a depiction of Cinderella, let's just use her for example, it typically is of a white woman, because she was German, and, that's what they had over there, to be honest. So I question, why is Cinderella Japanese in this version? Now, I'm not saying you can't have a Japanese Cinderella, but if this is the Cinderella from the fairy tales that is known throughout the whole world, why is she not German? Why is Red Riding Hood not German? I mean, the thing is, they got the guy who played Richard Brown in Shinkanger to play the Emperor with No Clothes. So they got a guy who's Italian-American, I think, to play this German character, which is a little bit closer. But again, why a Japanese woman to play Red Riding Hood and Cinderella? I mean, it would be, in my mind, so let's say this took place a Power Rangers season, and they have the character of Momotaro, and they make that a white person. Be a little confusing, wouldn't it? Because typically when you hear Japanese fairy tale or folklore, you think of a Japanese character. If you hear English folklore, you think of an English character. Very rarely, if at all, do you have that person identifying with that character in their own culture. So the question is, when you are told the tale of Cinderella in Japan or Little Red Riding Hood, Are they told in typical Grimm's German style, or is it adapted in some way for a Japanese audience? I just find that curious. And I'm not saying, again, that you can't. I just think it's a kind of an odd choice. Yeah, it's easier to get a Japanese actress, but don't you think for authenticity that you should get a white actress? I'm sure there are some white actresses in Japan that can speak Japanese and do this role. Then again, the characters were superfluous anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I just don't understand this whole nationality thing where you decide to cast Japanese characters in roles that are known for their German origins. Again, it's like taking an African-American story and recasting all white people within that folklore. Doesn't make a lot of sense, maybe insulting to some people. But that's kind of a minor point we have here. Nothing really significant with the villains in this particular episode, other than it seems Greta may still be alive somehow. Schwartz is definitely alive. He survived, which is kind of a surprise, but not really. So Schwartz is going to be coming back and doing something on his own. Let's see here. Now, there's also an interesting thing in the coda at the end where the ToQger are shooting off fireworks for whatever reason. But there, Tokatchi seems to have a thing for Mio. She took care of him, put the Band-Aid on him and stuff, and he's like, you're all right, you're nice and stuff, and it looks like he was trying to confess something to her when Akira went ahead and set off a couple more fireworks. So, is there something going on between Tokatchi and Mio? Probably. I would definitely like to see some sort of romance develop, because I'll tell you that's the one thing we're kind of missing from a lot of Sentais, is a lot of inter-team romance that actually plays out. I mean, I'm not a big fan of romance in general, but it'd be nice, if a couple of characters were boyfriend, girlfriend or something, or there was something like that going on, as opposed to like Mio's relationship with Ken from Geki Ranger. It's like it ain't gonna last the whole episode, so what's the point? See SF Debris' discussion on things like that. That's pretty much all I got for this episode. Again, really good for Tokatchi and his characterization. Again, I just didn't understand what was going on with our fairy tale characters, and then let's just kind of see where this goes with Mia and Tokatchi. Let's see what Schwartz is up to, and let's see how Greta plays in all of this. So, again, pretty decent episode. Let's see what happens in the next episode, which I find interesting because, according to what I've been told, this takes place in a bathhouse. All right, then. Let's see. All right. So, thank you guys for listening. Have a good evening, and the tavern is now closed.